So now I would like to introduce Steve Slevinski, and I'm going to click on his screen. Here's Steve. And welcome, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay. Steve, I'd like you to know that we love SignPuddle. And without you, we wouldn't have, for example, the 27 books of the New Testament. We wouldn't have so many pieces of literature used all around the world. We want to thank you for bringing us to the World Wide Web so that people can write right online. Would you like to start telling us about it? We're a few minutes early, but I don't see how that's a problem.
Oh, that's just fine. This is my presentation on the SignPuddle standard for SignWriting text.
So should I go to your screen?
In a second. It's really discussing a document that I've written called Draft Slevinski SignWriting Text, and we're on version 03 right now. I released it through the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. I wanted to try to make a standard, and I was looking for an organization to publish it through. The one thing I really like about the IETF is that it really clarifies the intellectual property rights, the idea that SignWriting is out there to be used. This isn't proprietary software or the standard. It's an open standard that people, I want them to use it. If you can go ahead and go to the slide.
Sure.
This is really about how we encode SignWriting. Now, I know that we can't see Adam right now, so I'm going to explain the slide a little bit, and then I'm going to go back to me and Adam so that you can see the interpretation. So this presentation is about how we encode SignWriting. First, I started with a mathematical model of Valerie told me how it worked, and I did my best to make a model that reflected that. And after I came up with that model, I wanted to make a practical application, something that actually used that model. Now, as development went on, that led to a complication. And I had two choices once you get a complication. You can make a complicated program, or you can redo the mathematical model. So we've been doing this, going round and round the circle for the past 7 years. And yeah, that's how we started. If we can go back so we can see Adam. All right. I was saying that we started with a mathematical model. We made a practical application. We had a complication where we could make a complicated program, or we could simplify the model. And we've been simplifying the model, going back to the practical application, new complications to a new model. Round and round the circle, but right now we've been stable for 2 years. In my talk, I'm going to talk about several things. One's going to be the background of SignWriting text, the benefits of SignWriting text, the elements of SignWriting text, everything that makes it up, and about extending the standard, making it the outreach more throughout the world. Where this standard came from, I just wanted to talk about my background really quick. I've mentioned math several times. I was a math major from preschool all the way through college. Later in high school, I developed a love for literacy because before high school, I never read. It was all math, all computers. But I started getting into fiction and nonfiction, and one book I absolutely love. It's called How to Read a Book. It's on the shelf there somewhere. But the book is called How to Read a Book. It's an amazing book, and it took my love of literacy to really to the next level. Later, I had kids, and my kids were not deaf. I didn't know any deaf people, but I read a book talking about, I think it was called Baby Signs. The idea is that children can communicate with sign language before they can actually learn to speak, because the eye and the hand develop faster than the ear and the mouth. my son, we working together, him making up signs, me trying to repeat them, we had a dialogue of about 40 different signs that we used. It was great to be able to communicate with him. After about 40 signs, he started talking, and he really dropped the sign language. My daughter, she learned about 5 signs, then she started talking, and it was all over. Years later, my wife actually started working in a deaf program where half the staff was deaf. She didn't know sign language, so she learned by immersion. She was just thrown in the environment. She had a really good deaf friend, and they actually went to the bar to practice sign language. And that's where I met my first deaf friends from. Reading about the deaf, I realized that they didn't have their own writing system. So I went searching online, and I found SignWriting. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Why aren't people using this? And that's where the idea for Pittsburgh United for Deaf Literacy came in. After that, it was a 10-year collaboration with Valerie Sutton, and we've been working ever since. Now, SignWriting text, it really began with SignWriting itself, which is 1974. The idea of using it on computers started in 1984. Valerie already talked about Richard Gleaves, but he wrote SignWriter DOS from 86 to around 96. It was a great program. He did amazing things with a limited memory. And a lot of the ideas that I use are reflected back in SignWriter DOS. It's Valerie and Richard Gleaves communicated, and they understood each other, and they understood SignWriting. And the same thing happened with me and Valerie. We talked, we understood each other, and we both understood SignWriting and how we could make it work on the computer. After Richard Gleaves, there was a series of other symbol sets. There was the 1999, there was the 2002, and then there was the 2004. That's where I came in. SignPuddle, where that began. SignPuddle began with screen captures. I saw images of SignWriting on the web, and I said, I want to use that on my website. So I took a screen capture. The thing is, I need to save the file, save that screen capture. So I picked the gloss name. So if I saw a sign for hello, I saved the file as hello.ping, and that was my file. And I built up a limited dictionary based on gloss and these screen captures. Later, I found the huge symbol set that Valerie created, and I was able to put that into an application where you could take any symbol that you wanted and drop it into this two-dimensional image. And after you had constructed your sign with the drag and drop, you could save it, but it was still saving it under that gloss name. So, Val, if you can bring up the next slide, or just go to the slide presentation. I'll have Adam explain this after. I'd like to stay on this on the screen for a little bit because we're talking about how do we name the signs. My first way to name a sign was something I called the build string, and that was just the a long string name for each symbol. It was comma delimited, so I had symbol, comma, x coordinate, comma, y coordinate, comma, symbol name, comma, x, comma, y. It was very, very verbose. It worked. It was pretty easy to process, but it had some limitations. Next, I went to something called SignWriting Markup Language. I took all the previous data that I had and I converted it to this new format, which is XML. If you've ever seen the HTML code to a web page where you have the greater than and the less than sign with all the tags in there, that's pretty much what SWML looked like. It worked okay, but using XML libraries had a lot of overhead that I didn't really like. After that came binary SignWriting. Now this is the idea that rather than having commas and rather than having this markup, we just had ones and zeros. I explained the name of the sign in a bunch of characters, and those characters were 12-bit characters, bunch of ones and zeros. And the only thing is there really isn't a way to support a 12-bit character. There's either ASCII or Unicode. So I took those characters and I put them into something I call character signwriting. And that is best represented right now on the Unicode private use area, where every character from binary signwriting is equivalent to a character on the private use area plane. Now, Unicode has its own complications, especially if you're using regular expressions in JavaScript. So binary signwriting has a second trunk, which goes down to something called Cartesian signwriting. It's unusual spelling with a K because we have irregular coordinates. They're irregular because I found when you try to search for them, those irregular coordinates really mess things up. So Cartesian signwriting went down to something we call now formal signwriting. Formal signwriting is an ASCII standard. It's what we use when we save, when we search. All the data in SignPuddle uses formal signwriting, and all the data in the ASL Wikipedia uses formal signwriting. Formal signwriting is equivalent to the Unicode. It's a one-to-one transformation, and you can also go back from the Unicode back to the ASCII formal signwriting. All right, if you can come back to me and Adam. I'm not really sure how to explain the graph that I just showed. I'm sure Valerie will put together captioning later for this, so I apologize for anybody that's watching the interpreting. The benefits of the standard. Let me just get right to it. Signwriting is universal. Every sign language that we've tried to use with signwriting has worked. There is a long list of languages, and there's more all the time. People that are using signwriting are able to use it. If you can go to the slide. All right, come on back. One of the benefits of the SignPuddle standard for signwriting text is we have beautiful images. That was an example of the scalar vector graphics. Originally, we only had ping images, which is basically a bitmap, which if you look at a bitmap really close and enlarge it, you see all these blocks. It's not very pretty. Working with Val, and actually with Adam Frost, the man who's interpreting right now, he went through and he hand traced every symbol of the ISWA where it couldn't be automatically rotated. This was a very long and very involved process, but the results are absolutely stunning and amazing. We have SVG graphics, and they look beautiful, I think. Okay, Val, if you could bring up the slide again. The great thing about signwriting text is we have real sign language text. It is grammatically correct. Right nowadays, we write vertically, from top to bottom. And the one thing this really clarifies is the left side versus the right side when you're reading. You can easily scan down. Historically, we've written horizontally. And some people still write horizontally today, especially for bilingual education. The thing about vertical is you can discuss with body weight shifts. You can use lanes. You can talk about the old system of writing in one lane, and you can talk about the new way of writing in the other lane. And that body weight shift is really apparent in the writing. Yeah. All right, if you could come back. I was talking about the different ways we write. We have the vertical writing and the horizontal writing. The vertical writing, we do have the lanes, which is an advanced technique for writing. It's not used all the time, but when you need to talk about body weight shifts from the left to the right, it really clarifies what you're reading. All right, go ahead and bring up the slide. Yeah, this is a really involved slide, so we might need to leave it up for a minute. It is talking about how we sort. Okay, you can come back, Val.
Okay.
For signwriting text, we have efficient sorting. If you have two signs that are written in formal signwriting, all you have to do is use a greater or a less than. You just ask the computer to sort these by natural numbers, and they automatically sort. The thing is that signs don't sort automatically. You need to add what Valerie called the sign spelling sequence. It is the writer who uses a specific theory of sorting, and they write this ordered list of symbols. In the example that's on the slide, it has it broken down into syllables that goes along with Valerie's theory, where syllable 1 is the beginning hand shape, syllable 2 is the movement between the first syllable and the next syllable, and the third syllable is the ending hand shapes. And then at the end, you can have locations, facial expressions, and other details. The thing I absolutely love about SignWriting text and the formal SignWriting is that we have powerful searching. We can find signs that have exact symbols, one or more. You can find signs that have general symbols. You want a specific hand shape, but you don't care about what rotation it has or what palm facing. You can find entire symbol ranges. Say if you want to find all signs that have hands from the index group 1 and maybe the rub symbol. You can find all those. Those searches right there you can do without looking at the location. But the thing I absolutely love even more than just the powerful searching is the approximate location searching. Val, if you could bring up the slide. With the approximate location searching, you can find signs that look like other signs. At the top of the slide, you see that there is an example sign, and on the bottom, you see the search results. And those signs are not written the exact same. The positions of the X, Y coordinates are different, but the searching is still able to find them. With SignPuddle, we have a growing body of work. There are over 1 million signs that have been written with SignWriting text, and the work just keeps growing and growing. All right, the elements of the standard. We have the International SignWriting Alphabet. Well, let me just get right to that. The ISWA 2010. This is really a work of love. It's the amount of work that me and Valerie put into getting this symbol set organized. She would create something, I would make a model that showed what she had created, and then she would update that. We'd communicate, talk, and we refined it, and it's really a great symbol set. Writer control and flexibility. This is one of the key elements of SignWriting text, is that the writer, he picks the symbols, he picks the placement of the symbols, and he can also pick the ordering. There is no limitations. If you want to write a sign, however you want to write it, that's how you write it. There's no gatekeeper. You don't have to say, I'd like this new sign, maybe we can get it in the dictionary. You don't have to ask permission to write a sign. You just write it. And there's also no waiting. If you want a sign to look a certain way, you write the sign, and that sign is available wherever SignWriting text is supported. The visual image is another key element to the standard, and I've been talking about that, where we have two-dimensional order, where every symbol has an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. Our images, for the visual image, we have the ping, we have the SVG, and there's also TrueType, which I'll be discussing later today. All right, another key element is the mathematical name of the sign. It is a plain text string of characters. If you've seen it before, it's a bunch of letters, a bunch of numbers, all stringed together, and it tells you what's in that sign. It's structured with tokens. When I say token, is just what the... Imagine a bunch of blocks. You string them all together, and a token is a kind of block that you use. And this mathematical name has a structure to it. Mathematical name, all signs have two-dimensional space, which I was talking about, which has the symbol, with the X and the Y coordinate. Now, unless you're talking about when symbols overlap, it doesn't really matter what order that two-dimensional space is written in. Val, if you could pull up the slide again.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you this one. All right, this has right here, this is the two-dimensional order with the sign that you actually read, and that's part of the sign name. Now, there's only two symbols in here that overlap, and that's syllable 3, the last two hand shapes. Now, in the one-dimensional string, which is the name, because the string name has to be one-dimensional, that first hand shape has to be before the other hand shape at the bottom, so that the overlap is correct. Otherwise, when you're describing how that sign is written, it doesn't matter what order those other symbols are written in. Now, the name of the sign that also has a one-dimensional order, and in this slide you can see that on the right-hand side, and that's syllable 1, syllable 2, 3, and 4. And that order does matter, but not all signs have that one-dimensional order that have been added to that. But it's not possible to sort a sign unless it does. And like I said, that is often written according to somebody's theory of sorting. All right, regular expressions are a definite element of the standard, and this is where that fast searching comes in from. Regular expressions are used for pattern matching. It's a really archaic kind of syntax, but you describe what you're looking for. There's two symbols that we can use. One is the asterisk, which is just the asterisk on the keyboard. The other is the plus symbol. They're used in how we describe these patterns, where an asterisk means 0 or more matches, and a plus sign will mean 1 or more matches. And all of the formal sign writing and the strings are described with these regular expression pattern matches. Efficient processing. Regular expressions are fast, and they're fast everywhere. JavaScript, any programming language, they will support the regular expressions. Automatic conversion, and this is one of the great elements of formal sign writing, is if you take the name of a sign, you can give it to this automatic conversion, and it will give you a super long regular expression. But that regular expression, when you use it, will find all the signs that look like that sign that you just asked for. There's an associated query language as well, and the query language goes with that automatic conversion, where you write something really short and succinct, and the automatic conversion will give you a very long regular expression. Because if you can help it, you don't want to have to write regular expressions by hand. But this automatic conversion, it's really nice. Like I said, 2 years of stability. Actually, since January 12th of 2012. That was the last time that we went around that loop of math, application, complication, back to math. That's the same for the ASCII, and it's the same for the Unicode. The formal sign writing has been stable for 2 years, and the data, all the data in SignPuddle has been available in the standard. Extending the standard. There is the standards organizations right now. Like I said, I've published through the IETF. Any other organizations I've looked at, but I've never really gotten any traction. But one thing we can do is we can embrace the standard. There's several people and applications that are embracing the standard. There's Rachel Cannon at the University of Connecticut with SignType. There's SignWriter Studio, who is compatible with the formal sign writing, and he's going to be talking later today. That's Jonathan Duncan. Delegs Online, they are using the data straight from SignPuddle. There's Wikimedia Incubator. That's where we have the ASL Wikipedia, 50 articles. The Incubator, they're actually moving on to officially support the vertical writing mode. it's really a great development. And also the TrueType development uses the standard as it is. If you're not going to embrace the standard 100% directly, the next best thing to do is to maintain compatibility. Swift, for example, they have a modified symbol set. And as long as they keep track of what they're doing and how it maps to our symbol set, there's no reason that we can't transform our data back and forth between the two. Jonathan Duncan later today, I guess he's also going to talk about an alternate ISWA 2010 font, where rather than the font having every symbol in the set, he deconstructs the font, and he only encodes the symbol pieces, and then he rebuilds the entire symbol from those pieces. It's really interesting. Another way to extend the standard, I think, is to not maintain compatibility, but to experiment and try something new. We are pretty much standardized on the formal sign writing with the ISWA 2010. Our data, I don't think it's going to change. Even if there's later versions, this version will always be used. It's the advantages and the benefits are just really overwhelming, and all the complications, there's things that we're doing right now to deal with those. But if you experiment and try something new, that's a great idea. There are different symbol sets you could design. You could use other coordinates rather than X, Y. You can use radius and distance. Those are called polar coordinates. You can try other internal structures where our mathematical names divide time and space. We have the timing sequence in the front, which is optional, which is used for sorting, and we have the end section, which is the two-dimensional space, which is not ordered. Instead of structuring that way, there's an internal structure where you could try some type of tree design. I've heard people talk about it. Nobody's ever come up with a way to actually do that, but if you want to try an experiment, that's a great idea to try. Other character sets, we have the formal sign writing, and we have the Unicode private use area. If you want to try to develop another character set, that's another great idea. Other input methods. Right now, our main input method is the drag and drop. There's also the keyboarding technique that was Richard Gleaves used in SignWriter DOS. Keep meaning to get back to that. Other things keep coming in the way, but we will get there with real keyboarding once again for sign writing. Some people may prefer to keep with the drag and drop forever, especially once we integrate the searching better into the applications. It will become a lot faster and a lot easier to use. The last thing about trying something new is I think it's really important, if there's any brave souls who have a lot of time to work on several iterations of their development, it will show not only the weaknesses that the SignPuddle standard may have, but it will also show the strengths of all the things that the SignPuddle standard can actually do. And I think that's about it for my presentation.
It is absolutely a wonderful presentation. Thank you. And it's a summary of so many things. You know, really, it helped me. It's interesting. We've been working together so many years, Steve, and yet I didn't know all of that in such a succinct and wonderful way. I want you to know that we actually have a question. Well, it's really a comment. It's a comment on our question answer. You know, how they have this area where people can make comments or ask questions in Google Hangouts. I'm not quite sure what to call it. The Q&A, I guess. Mm-hmm. If I select this, I'm going to try to do this. It's from, I believe it may be from Muhammad Ali Balti. I'm not sure. It's from Fazir, is that? I'm not sure. Let me select this. And what does that do? Can you see it?
It says it's currently answering that question.
Oh, it says, that's an incredible invention. Thank you very much, it says.
I think you're talking about sign writing, because sign writing is an amazing invention.
I don't think so. Don't you think they're talking about your invention of SignPuddle and your SignPuddle standard for sign writing text? I think that's what it is. Okay, well, I guess that's a difference. We all are working together, obviously, and there is absolutely nothing that we have right now that could exist with only one person doing it, let's face it. You know, one of the reasons why I say that I invented it in 1974, but from there it spread, it's important for people to understand I don't have any control over how people use sign writing around the world, and how could I, and why would I want to? I don't want to. I want it to spread. And what I'm impressed about your work, Steve, is how open you are. I really love the last screen that you showed about how you could do new developments. That's really exciting. Do we still have that up? I'm not sure. Let me see that.
No, I can get back to
I like this. I like this. Everybody should see this. Whoops, come back.
I'm going to get back to that, too. I have two other things to add. But...
Yeah, because we have another 10-15 minutes before Stefan starts to show Dillegs. Yeah, I think this is very open-minded of all of us. I'll come back to me for just 1 minute. We all know that freedom of thinking is what makes beautiful ideas grow. And when we say, okay, it's out there, let's see what we can do, and people stick with each other's teamwork and try to work together, it's amazing what new ideas can evolve. And that's why I like the way Steve works. See how open he is to all kinds of new ideas. And I think the main thing that would be wonderful for the sign writing users is that if you could at least try to get it possible to be able to be compatible with other software. I know that's really hard. I guess you call that backward compatible. Is that what they call that? I don't know, but don't you agree, Steve, that if we could just get it so we could all sort of use each other's software, it helps, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. I definitely believe in maintaining compatibility where possible. I back, even though we've had those multiple generations of going around the circle of math to application to complication back to math, every time I've tried to maintain compatibility, and I have conversion routines that are online, different places that help you convert between the different evolutions of the standard.
Yes, and you know, coming back to the standard fascinates me, because what is a standard? We write by hand, and then Richard Gleaves and I tried our best to get some symbols in there, and Richard did a great job, and we got some symbols in there, and that became the standard for a while. Now, what symbols did I choose? Well, I chose what I thought was used the most, but I'm just one person, and I didn't see every document in the world, and it's possible that we could have chosen this or that, and we didn't. And as Steve just pointed out, Richard Gleaves was restricted by memory, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so the memory problem made it, we were just sort of forced into just choosing some symbols, right? We couldn't have a huge symbol set because the computers at that time were restricted. A lot of people don't grasp that. There were actually 10 palm facings, not 6. And those 10 palm facings really made a difference when you write by hand, because then you have much more flexibility. But when you're writing by hand, you don't have to memorize all that stuff. It's like it just happens, and you just do it. And you don't even know that you are actually writing with thousands of symbols, but you're not really, because you're only looking at one angle on it. You're not thinking of all the other possible angles. But a computer program has to know all the possibilities, doesn't it? And has to store it. So I had no choice but to break down the 10 palm facings into 6. And when we did that, all of a sudden it spread around the internet because it was on the computer. And then you inherited that, Steve, didn't you? And so it's like one choice that came from not enough memory back in the 1980s and 90s then influenced the way we're using computers today in 2014. Kind of strange, isn't it? Have you seen that? Yes. It's been an issue because now some of the users, when they write by hand, they would do something differently, and they don't have all the choices they'd like. So we're always finding new symbols that aren't at the moment in the ISWA that could be. But you and I, the reason I appreciate your work with me was that I felt really flustered by this problem of everybody who was using it all over the world needed more of those handwriting symbols being put into the computer software, but I didn't know which ones to choose. And in fact, Steve helped me hone down, focus down to the ISWA 2008. That was really hard. Do you remember how we had to take out all the dance writing symbols, which is wonderful, but they weren't needed for sign writing, were they? And that was,
I remember the conversions. Oh, yes.
and then Steve, that's right. I don't think everybody knows the torture that Steve went through because we were using the International Movement Writing Alphabet, and then Steve helped me hone it down to just the sign writing, and we got the International Sign Writing Alphabet 2008. But Steve had to write conversion programs so that all of Steve's software development to that date had been using these other symbols, and we had to convert it, didn't we? And
there were really complicated conversions that it just wasn't move this symbol here, it symbols within symbols. And
yeah, very. And on top of that, everybody, I think you should realize we were not working with a brand new computer program or brand new symbol set that had no other documents already written. We weren't starting clean. We had hundreds and hundreds of documents already written in the older IMWA. So when Steve had to do this conversion, we were doing it for a reason. Steve had to make sure that the old documents could be read in the new ISWA 2008, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were dealing with a building that was already built, and we were taking out little bricks from parts of the wall and then putting it all back together again like Humpty Dumpty. And then, as I think Claudia actually mentioned in presentation 1 yesterday on January 21st, Claudia, who is working with the SWIFT program and the SWORD project from France and Italy, Claudia mentioned that some of their software development actually came about because they were basing it on the ISWA 2008, and they found some flaws. Well, let me tell you, I just want everyone to know, I'm the first one to know there were flaws. I could barely go to bed at night. I was so nervous over all the little things that we couldn't get done in time, and yet we had to sooner or later do it, didn't we, Steve? We had to take the jump because we could have changed them forever, right? And so then we found out there were some flaws, and so then we created the 2010, the 2010 version of the ISWA. And was that hard to convert from the 2008 to the 2010?
The 8 to the 10 was a lot easier. It didn't have so many internal changes. It was mostly rearranging around the top. There was a few symbols that we really did switch around the internals of, but it was a lot more focused than just a couple.
Okay, well, guess what? I just looked over onto the right under the questions and answers section. Have you seen what's there, Steve? Can you?
Yeah. As for sign text, is it possible to make a new version? First, adding new hand shapes that are not shown on the SignWriting hand shapes. The ISWA 2010 right now, as it is a set, a finalized set. We're not going to be changing anything that's already in there. There has been discussion, though, of new hand shapes and new mouth movements. That is something that we may or may not do. I think that there will be enough interest to make it happen, but if we're going to do it, I'd like to do it at one time as a all-together set. So if there are any hand shapes that you would really, really like to have, please catalog them, talk about them, and later when we have a specific set of these hand shapes and these mouth movements we really need, there will be an extension to the ISWA 2010 that will include just those new hand shapes and those new mouth movements, and we'll try to make it fit into the model as easy as possible.
Okay, and yes, just so you all know, it was so overwhelming to do the ISWA 2008 and 2010 that I don't know whether I have the physical strength to handle it, but I think we could do it. We talked about a 2020 ISWA, but that's kind of far away, I realize that. I think Steve's idea of adding an additional set that somehow connects to the current ISWA 2010 sounds really good to me. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, if we're going to do it, that's the way we're going to do it. I don't think, for all intents and purposes, the ISWA 2010, with all its perfections and all its flaws that can be traced back all the way to Richard Gleaves and before, it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. And by the way, hi, Richard. I know that Richard's really excited about this presentation. I'm not sure I know he's working, so I'm not so sure he can see it, but maybe later, huh? Thanks, Richard, for everything you've done for us. We're all blessed by your work. So let's go on. Any other questions you can answer? We have another 10 minutes, I think, Steve, so this is good. Can you go through that?
Yeah, let me talk about some things. If you could invite Stefan, he's asking if we could send him an invite link.
Oh, I see. He doesn't have it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take care of that then. Could you answer everybody, and I will invite Stefan to come, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know how do I do it? Wait a minute, just one moment. I'm so sorry. I don't have to use email. I can invite him from here, from the software.
Let me. There's an invite button at the top of the page. We can possibly just use that.
And I just use that, and I use his email address. Is that right? Okay.
If you just start typing in Stefan, it should find him in your circle.
I'm sorry, everybody. I'm new to software, you know. Okay, so I will do that. I'll invite him, and so then I just go invite. All right. Let's hope he comes in. I do have you, Steve, still.
Mm-hmm. I am still here.
So now we just have to see if we can get Stefan to come in, and I did send him an invite. Let's hope. So now please go ahead and answer the questions if you can. We do have another 10 minutes before Stefan starts.
Okay. Well, if you could just go to the slide or the presentation.
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry.
This is the actual document that I was discussing. It is the SignPuddle standard for SignWriting text. It is 20-some pages long, and it talks about, here's the table of contents. We have the SignWriting Script, talking about that, SignWriting text, talking about that. The next talks about the formal SignWriting with the light markup and that query language that has that powerful searching. Has the Unicode that we're using in there right now. Then it has an appendix with modern SignWriting. That's a textbook that I started. It's really just a little booklet back in 2012, which we're still compatible with. Talks about the ISWA 2010 and how it's broken down, and then Appendix C. That's where some people might really be interested, because when under compatibility, I have information about the SignType and the SignWriter Studio, the DELEGs and the Swift. Talk about Wikimedia Incubator and things like that. The thing I really love about the standard is when I started making SignPuddle, I kept making it more complicated to do more things, and I didn't want to have to keep writing more and more complicated programs because I wanted it to be fast. I also wanted it to be easier to use. So the SignPuddle standard is really all the best things about SignPuddle that have been pulled out of that old SignPuddle code, and it's really crystallized it in those names for the signs. And I really like using it.
Yes, I just sent another email to Stefan with the presenter's link for today. For all of those who are presenting today, you have a presentation link just for day 2, and I hope we did send that to everybody. I hope you can find it. So to explain, yes, Steve has put this SignPuddle standard for SignWriting text as a draft up on the internet, and I hope that you all go to read it. It's very important work. Now, I see that there are some lovely comments here. Do you want to answer any more questions while we're waiting for Stefan?
Let's see, is it possible to integrate the speech writing symbol set? Yeah, exactly. Those are extra mouth movements that we don't have. I'd like it if we could collect all the mouth shapes and all the hand shapes. Somebody says for Quebec Sign Language, there's going to be several hand shapes needed for that. Again, that's going to be that addition set, or the addendum, if you will. translation on SignPuddle, after getting the translation, you can select among the different signs. There's a small green dot, which sometimes I want to remove, but I can't unless I go to Sign Text. Small green dot. That may be a word in the translation that nobody was able to find, or the SignPuddle wasn't able to find. So if you wanted to get rid of that, you would actually have to get rid of that word that you put in that translation box. All right, that looks like it for the questions.
Okay, well, I also want to thank some people who had some wonderful comments, not just asking questions, but I can see they say, thank you for your answers. They're a blessing, somebody said. And let me see. Somebody said, Valerie, you are the mother of the SignWriting world. Thank you. From 1974, you have been an amazing mentor. Oh, thank you, Charles. Aren't you sweet? You are really a kind man. I want you to know that in Charles's presentation yesterday, he mentioned, of course, wanting a program, and I don't blame him. And actually, Steve has already pretty much given Charles and all of us the tools that we could use to sort dictionaries by the sign symbols with the sign spelling. By the way, Stefan Vorman has...
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hello. We're here. We're just presenting right now. Just one moment. We'll be right there. Steve, I guess we need to say goodbye, but I just want to tell you, Charles, about that later, okay? All right. Thank you, Steve Slevinski, for all you do. We love you. Thank you. It was a really, really good presentation. Thank you so much. Yes, exactly. Thank you. That's great.